The barrier had stood for 300 years, and nobody on Earth remembered why it was there. Captain Taman stared at the wall of automated defense stations that circled the solar system like a cage. His ship, the Resilience, drifted near Mars, scanning the ancient structures that his ancestors had tried and failed to breach countless times. "Still active," Higgins said from the engineering station. She pulled her dark hair into a tight ponytail and frowned at her screens. "Power signatures unchanged. Whatever keeps them running, it doesn't need fuel or maintenance." Taman nodded slowly. Every child on Earth learned about the barrier in school. 3 centuries ago, aliens had come to Earth. They spoke to world leaders for exactly 1 hour. Then they built the stations and left. The message was clear. Humanity was not welcome among the stars. Nobody knew why. Nobody knew who built it. And nobody could break through. "Take us closer," Taman said. "I want better readings." As Resilience moved forward, Taman thought about his grandfather's stories. The old man had spent his life studying the barrier, convinced that humanity was meant for something greater. He died believing Earth would break free one day. Taman had joined the Space Corps to continue that dream, far across the galaxy. Admiral Dayon stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. The orders in his hand would change everything. The Dominion Empire had ruled 4,000 star systems for millennia. They were the oldest, strongest civilization in known space. And now, they needed resources from a small yellow star in the outer territories. "Sir, the data confirms massive mineral deposits in the Sol system," his tactical officer reported, "especially in the asteroid belt and the outer planets." Dayon studied the holographic display. Sol 3, the inhabited world called Earth, glowed blue and green. The quarantine barrier surrounded it like a string of pearls. "How long to dismantle the barrier?" 3 weeks, Admiral. The stations are old Dominion technology. We have the access codes." "Excellent. Begin immediately." Dayon dismissed the officer with a wave. The humans would finally meet their galactic neighbors. He imagined their primitive faces staring up at Dominion ships in awe. It would be amusing in the Dominion archives. Deep beneath the capital world's surface, Jisoo made a discovery that turned her blood cold. She was a historian, tasked with cataloging ancient records that nobody had read in thousands of years. Most of it was boring administrative data. But this file was different. The seal on the data crystal showed the mark of the old council, the government that ruled before the current Dominion. Jisoo's hands shook as she loaded it into her reader. The first line made her stop breathing. "Permanent quarantine order. Sol system, sector 447. Species, human. Threat level, absolute." She read faster, her heart pounding. The old council had encountered humans over 3,000 years ago. Not these humans on Earth, but their ancestors, spreading across the stars in generation ships. The report described first contact, trade, cultural exchange. Then something changed. A border dispute with humans escalated. 3 old council worlds died. Not conquered. Not occupied. Completely dead. Billions gone. The humans didn't stop. They didn't negotiate. They adapted, learned, and struck with terrifying efficiency. The old council threw everything at them. Fleets, weapons, entire armadas. The humans kept coming. The war lasted 40 years. The old council won, barely, after losing a third of their territory. But they couldn't kill all the humans. They were too scattered, too resilient. So the old council made a choice. They found one human colony ship, erased its databanks, and guided it to an isolated world, Earth. They wiped the colonists' memories of space travel, of warfare, of everything. Then they built the barrier. The final entry in the report was a warning, written by the old council's last supreme commander: never break the human quarantine. They sleep only because we allow it. If they wake, if they remember what they are, the galaxy will burn. This is not cruelty. This is mercy. Jisoo ran from the archives, the data crystal clutched in her hand. She had to reach Admiral Dayoon. She had to stop this. Back at the barrier, Taman watched something impossible happen. One of the defense stations flickered. Its power signature dropped. Then another station went dark. Then another. "Hi, Jin, are you seeing this?" "I don't understand," she whispered. "They're shutting down. All of them. Simultaneously. Across the solar system. Alarms blared on every human station and ship. The barrier that had trapped them for 3 centuries was disappearing. On Earth, people poured into the streets, staring up at the sky. Scientists scrambled to understand. Military commanders shouted orders. Nobody knew what was happening. Taman gripped his command chair as the last station went dark. For the first time in 300 years, there was nothing between humanity and the stars. "Sir," his communications officer said, voice tight with tension. "We're receiving a transmission. It's not human. Someone's hailing us. Put it through." The holographic display shimmered, and Admiral Daon's face appeared. He looked bored, almost amused. "Attention, human vessel. This is Admiral Daon of the Dominion Third Fleet. Your quarantine has been lifted. This system now falls under Dominion authority. Prepare to receive our diplomatic delegation." Taman stared at the alien face. 300 years of questions suddenly had an answer. They weren't trapped by some mysterious force. They were prisoners, and their jailers had just returned. "This is Captain Temin of the Earth ship Resilience. Who are you? Why were we imprisoned?" Daon's expression showed mild irritation. "Imprisoned? You were isolated for your own protection. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Primitive species require supervision. You should be grateful for the Dominion's benevolence." Something cold settled in Taman's chest. "We don't need your protection. We never asked for it. What you want is irrelevant. Dominion law is absolute. Stand by for further instructions." Transmission ended. Hyjin moved to Temin's side. "What do we do?" Temin watched the spot where the barrier had been. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. "We were meant for the stars." Now he understood. Humanity hadn't been put in a cage to protect them. Someone had feared them enough to hide them away. "Send a priority message to Earth Command," Taman said quietly. "Tell them everything. The aliens who imprisoned us are back, and they think we're still the weak colony they locked away 3 centuries ago." Far below on Earth, defense systems that had been maintained for generations suddenly made sense. The drills, the training, the weapons development. Humanity had never stopped preparing for war, even though they didn't know why. Now they would remember. On the Dominion flagship, Admiral Daon reviewed deployment plans and smiled. This would be the easiest occupation in history, in the archives. Jisoo finally reached the communications hub, gasping for breath. "I need to speak to Admiral Daon immediately. It's an emergency. He's made a terrible mistake." The communications officer looked at her with confusion. "The Admiral left 3 hours ago. His fleet just entered the Sol system." Jisoo felt the data crystal grow heavy in her hand. She was too late. Humanity was awake, and nobody had told them what they had been. 6 months had passed since the barrier fell and Earth was occupied. Dominion warships hung in orbit like predators circling prey. Their bases dotted the Moon, Mars, and the outer moons of Jupiter. Admiral Daon commanded from his flagship, watching humans scurry below him like insects. Sunhae stood in the Dominion embassy on Earth, her diplomatic credentials clutched in sweating hands. She had been chosen to represent humanity at the first official negotiations. The daughter of teachers, she had spent her life believing in peace and understanding. Now, facing the Dominion ambassador, she felt those beliefs crumbling. "Your terms are unacceptable," Sunhae said, trying to keep her voice steady. The document before her demanded complete resource extraction rights, military oversight of all human governments, and forced integration into the Dominion as a client species. The Dominion ambassador, a tall being with gray skin and cold eyes, looked at her with something like pity. "These are not negotiations, human. We are informing you of reality. You will comply or face consequences. We're a sovereign species. We have rights." The ambassador laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Rights are granted by strength. You have no strength. Accept the terms by tomorrow, or Admiral Dayon will demonstrate why resistance is futile. Sun He left the embassy shaking. She transmitted her report to Earth's Unified Council. The answer came back within an hour. Refuse the terms. Humanity would not surrender without a fight. On the Dominion flagship, Admiral Dayon received news of the rejection with satisfaction. He had expected compliance, but defiance would let him show these primitives their place. Target the mining colony on Titan. Minimum force. Just enough to make them understand. A young officer named Minho spoke up from his station. Sir, Titan colony is civilian. 50,000 inhabitants, mostly miners and their families. Exactly, Dayon said. Minimal strategic value. Maximum psychological impact. Fire when ready. Minho's hands moved across his console, programming the strike even as his conscience screamed. He was a soldier, trained to follow orders. But this felt wrong. The targeting computer locked onto the colony's main dome. Sir, we could target the mining equipment instead. Achieve the same objective without civilian casualties. Dayon turned to face him, eyes hard. Officer Minho, are you questioning my orders? No, sir. I just thought, don't think. Execute. The flagship's weapons fired. Beams of concentrated energy crossed the void and struck Titan's surface. The colony's protective dome shattered like glass. Atmosphere rushed out into space. 50,000 people had less than a minute to understand they were dying on Earth. Taman watched the reports come in with growing horror. He was no longer captain of a single ship. Earth's military, such as it was, had been reorganized. Taman now commanded the entire defense fleet, 20 ships that had been designed for exploration, not war. He stood in the new military command center, surrounded by people looking to him for answers. 50,000 dead? Someone whispered. Yuna stepped forward. She had been an Olympic competitor once, a strategist who turned athletic competitions into tactical masterpieces. Now she applied that same mind to warfare. Admiral Dayon is sending a message. He thinks one demonstration will break us. It might, an officer said. We can't fight them. They have hundreds of ships. Temin looked at the tactical display. The Dominion fleet was powerful, yes, but they were arrogant. They believed humans were weak. That could be an advantage. Get me everything we know about Dominion ship designs. Every scan we've taken. Haijin, I need you to find weaknesses. Haijin was already working, her fingers flying across screens. She had been analyzing captured Dominion technology for months. Their ships are powerful but old. They haven't updated designs in centuries. They don't expect threats, so their defensive protocols are minimal. Yuna leaned over the tactical display, her eyes intense. We can't match them in open battle, but we don't need to. We need to make them bleed, make them afraid. Over the next week, Taman and Yuna planned in secret. They couldn't save Titan's victims, but they could make Dayon pay. Human ships began moving into position, disguising their movements as routine patrols. Nobody in the Dominion fleet noticed. Why would they watch harmless primitives? The attack came during the Dominion fleet's rest cycle. 3 human ships, equipped with improvised weapons built from mining equipment and Hijin's brilliant engineering, struck a Dominion capital ship at close range. The weapons were crude, nothing like advanced Dominion technology, but they worked. The capital ship's shields, designed to stop sophisticated attacks, failed against the simple kinetic force of accelerated metal projectiles. The ship broke apart, killing everyone aboard. Before the Dominion could respond, the human ship struck 2 more targets and vanished into the asteroid belt. Admiral Dayon raged on his bridge. How they're primitives. His tactical officer studied the data, face pale. Sir, they used simple mass drivers. Our shields are calibrated for energy weapons and advanced missiles. They threw rocks at us, just very fast rocks. Find them. Destroy them. But the human ships were gone, hidden among millions of asteroids. Dominion sensors couldn't distinguish them from natural rocks. Dayon realized too late that he had underestimated these humans. On the Dominion capital world, Q finally reached the High Council. They listened to her report about the old council's warnings with polite disinterest. One council member, ancient and dismissive, waved a hand. Those events happened thousands of years ago. These Earth humans are descendants, separated from their warrior ancestors by centuries. They've forgotten warfare. They're harmless. With respect, council member, they just destroyed 3 of our ships. A lucky strike. Admiral Dayun will handle it. This is a minor inconvenience, nothing more. Jasu left the council chambers feeling sick. They didn't understand. Nobody did. The humans weren't harmless. They were waking up. Minho couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Titan's dome shattering. 50,000 faces he would never know, gone because he followed orders. He began accessing classified files, searching for something to ease his guilt. Instead, he found casualty reports. The Dominion had lost more than 3 ships. Small human strike teams had hit supply depots, communication relays, and isolated outposts. Each attack was small, precise, and devastating. The humans were learning fast. Too fast, he found his way to a secure terminal and composed a message. It was treason, he knew. But he couldn't be part of this anymore. The message contained fleet positions, patrol routes, and defensive weaknesses. He encrypted it and sent it on a tight beam toward Earth, hidden in routine communications. On Earth, Taman received the mysterious transmission. At first he thought it was a trap, but Hyjin verified the data and it was legitimate. Someone in the Dominion fleet was helping them. Why would they help us? Sunhee asked. She had joined the military command after her failed diplomatic mission. Peace hadn't worked. Maybe war would. Maybe they're not all monsters, Taman said. Or maybe some of them see what's coming. Yuna spread the new intelligence across the tactical display. This changes everything. We can hit them harder. Make them hurt. Over the following months, human resistance intensified. Using Minho's intelligence, they struck targets across the solar system. Dominion soldiers began looking over their shoulders, jumping at shadows. Their ships traveled in larger groups for protection. Their patrols became predictable, defensive. Admiral Dayun requested reinforcements. The High Council, finally concerned, sent 12 additional fleets. Surely that would end this nuisance. But something had changed in humanity. The destruction of Titan hadn't broken them. It had reminded them of something buried deep in their genes. They were survivors. They were fighters. And they were very, very angry. In the command center, Temin watched new recruits train on simulators. Young people who had grown up dreaming of stars now learned to kill. It hurt to see, but he understood necessity. How many ships do we have now? 43, Hyjin reported. And I've finished reverse engineering their FTL drives. We can build our own now. Temin felt something shift in his chest. They could leave the solar system. They could take this fight to Dominion territory. How long to retrofit our fleet? 6 months. Do it. And design new ships. Bigger ones. If they want a war, we'll give them a war. Sunhee looked at him with concern. Temin, if we escalate, they escalated when they killed 50,000 civilians. We're just responding. He turned to Yuna. Start planning strikes beyond the solar system. Supply lines, shipyards, anything that supports their forces here. Yuna smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. Finally, let's show them what happens when you wake up humanity. The Dominion had controlled the galaxy for thousands of years through overwhelming force and the assumption of superiority. They had never faced an enemy that refused to accept defeat. They had never encountered a species that learned from every loss and came back stronger. Admiral. Dayon reviewed casualty reports in his private quarters. The humans were supposed to be weak. Instead, they were becoming more dangerous every day. He had killed 50,000 of them to prove Dominion strength. Now hundreds of his own people were dead. The humans showed no signs of stopping. In the darkness of his quarters, doubt crept in. What had he awakened? 18 months into the war, and the galaxy was starting to notice. Admiral Taman stood on the bridge of humanity's first purpose-built warship. The Defiant, and watched Dominion territory burn in the distance. They were 3 light years from Earth, deep in enemy space, and the Dominion had no idea they were coming. "Status?" Temin asked. Haijin worked at her engineering station, now part of a larger crew. She had trained hundreds of engineers to build and maintain the new fleet. "All systems ready, Admiral. The FTL drive is stable. Weapons charged." Humanity now had 67 warships. Built in secret shipyards hidden in the Kuiper Belt, they were smaller than Dominion vessels, but faster, more maneuverable, and crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. The Dominion controlled 40% of human territory, but that came at a cost. 12 Dominion fleets had been destroyed or severely damaged. Thousands of their soldiers were dead. Supply lines were constantly under attack. And now, humans were bringing the fight to their worlds. "Target locked," the weapons officer reported. "Dominion shipyard, just like our intelligence indicated." That intelligence came from Minho, who had been secretly feeding information to human forces for over a year. He had watched the war turn from a simple occupation into a nightmare. Dominion commanders no longer spoke confidently about primitive humans. They spoke in whispers about ghosts that struck from nowhere and vanished before reinforcements arrived. Taman said quietly, "Defiance weapons. Designed by Haijin using stolen Dominion technology and human innovation, struck the shipyard with devastating precision. The facility that produced Dominion capital ships for 3 sectors exploded in a chain reaction. Hundreds of ships under construction were destroyed. Thousands of workers died." Taman felt sick, but he didn't look away. This was war. The Dominion had taught them that on Titan. "Jump us out," he ordered. "Next target." The Defiant vanished into faster-than-light space before Dominion defenders could respond. This was humanity's new strategy, developed by Yuna and approved by Earth's Unified Council. Total warfare. No Dominion asset was safe anywhere in their territory. Supreme Commander Yuna sat in Earth's war room, surrounded by tactical displays showing the entire Dominion Empire. From the planet's core, it would take 6 hours to reach full charge. Minho detected the energy spike from his monitoring station. He had defected completely now, serving openly aboard a human ship. His technical knowledge of Dominion systems made him invaluable. "Sir, they're powering the Planet Killer. If it fires, it will destroy everything within 3 light years." Taman's blood ran cold. "How long until it's ready?" 6 hours? Maybe less. "Can we stop it?" "Only by destroying the control center. It's located beneath the planetary capital, surrounded by the heaviest defenses. It would take a ground assault." Yuna appeared on the communication screen from her command ship. "I'll lead the assault team. We have soldiers trained for this. It's a suicide mission," Taman said. "So was Kangman's. So was Titan. This war has been full of suicide missions." Yuna's expression was hard. "We end this today, one way or another." Bowman volunteered immediately when Yuna called for soldiers. At 19 years old, he had spent his entire adult life fighting. He couldn't remember peace. This was his chance to secure it, even if it cost him everything. The assault team consisted of 50 human soldiers and twice that many aliens from liberated species. They loaded onto dropships while the fleet provided covering fire. The journey through the capital's defenses was hell. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky. Half the dropships were destroyed before reaching the surface. Bowman's dropship crashed into a government building, at the impact killing a third of his squad instantly. He dragged himself from the wreckage, weapon in hand, and followed Yuna into the chaos of urban warfare. Dominion defenders fought desperately, knowing this was their final stand. The battle raged through pristine streets that had never seen war. Buildings that stood for millennia crumbled. Civilians fled in panic. "Keep moving," Yuna shouted, leading them toward the control center. "We have 4 hours." They fought through layer after layer of defense. Bowman watched friends die beside him, but he kept moving. Finally, they reached the entrance to the underground facility. Massive doors blocked their path, designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Hajin had given them an experimental explosive, something she invented specifically for this mission. They placed it against the door and ran for cover. The explosion was enormous, but the door held. Again, Yuna ordered. They used their last charge. This time, the door cracked. They poured through the gap and into the facility. Inside, they found Jisoo waiting for them, alone, holding a data crystal. I shut it down, she said, tears streaming down her face. I couldn't let them destroy everything. The council fled through escape tunnels. The weapon is offline. Yuna lowered her weapon slowly. Why help us? Because this needs to end. The Dominion is finished. Continuing to fight only causes more death. Jisoo held out the data crystal. This contains everything. All our secrets, all our technology, all our crimes. Maybe you can build something better. Bowman stared at this alien who had saved them all. What will happen to you? I'll face justice for my people's actions. It's only fair. On the flagship, Taman received confirmation that the weapon was neutralized. Relief flooded through him, followed by exhaustion. 3 years of constant warfare had aged him decades. Transmit our terms again. Tell them it's over. This time, the Dominion Council accepted. The surrender was broadcast across all frequencies to all remaining Dominion territories. The war was over. Humanity had won. Across the galaxy, celebrations erupted on liberated worlds. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were free. The Dominion Empire, which had ruled for millennia, fell in 42 months. But there were no celebrations in the human fleet. Too many friends were dead. Too much had been sacrificed. Taman stood on his bridge and watched the Dominion capital below, now occupied by human forces, and felt only emptiness. Sun-Hee joined him, wearing the formal robes of a diplomat. She had negotiated the final surrender terms, working with Jisoo and the few reasonable Dominion leaders who remained. The transition government is forming. Representatives from all liberated species. They want you to lead it. I'm a soldier, not a politician. You're the person they trust. You ended the war. Now you need to win the peace. Taman met her eyes. And if I become another tyrant? Power corrupts, Sun-Hee. We've seen it with the Dominion. Then we stop you. That's democracy. She smiled sadly. We're building something new. A coalition where no single species dominates. But it needs leadership to survive the birth. In his cell, former Admiral Dae-yoon watched news broadcasts of the surrender. He felt no satisfaction in being right. He had warned them, and they hadn't listened. Now the Dominion was dust, and humans ruled the galaxy. Taman visited him before the war crimes trials began. They sat across from each other, separated by a force field, to military leaders who had tried to destroy each other.
You won,
Dae-yoon said. What now? Will you become the new Dominion? I don't know, Taman admitted. We didn't fight this war to become conquerors. We fought for freedom. So did the Dominion once. 4,000 years ago, they overthrew an even older empire. They promised equality and justice. Look what they became. Daeon leaned forward. You awakened something in yourselves. The capacity for total warfare. Can you really put that back to sleep? Taman had no answer. He left Dae-yoon to await trial and returned to his ship. The question haunted him. What were they becoming? Jisoo provided one answer. She worked with human historians, compiling a complete record of the war. Every battle, every casualty, every decision. We must remember, she told them. All of it. The good and the terrible, so we never repeat our mistakes. Hyjin led the effort to share technology freely with all species. No more monopolies, no more power concentrated in one civilization. It was risky. But it was right. Yuna retired from military service and opened a memorial on Earth, a place to remember everyone who died, from all sides. War creates only ghosts, she said at the opening ceremony. We need to stop creating ghosts. Bowman survived the war, but couldn't adjust to peace. He had nightmares about the battles, flashbacks to friends dying beside him. He wasn't alone. Thousands of young humans struggled with the same trauma. They had grown up fighting and didn't know how to stop. The Coalition of Free Worlds officially formed 6 months after the war ended. 200 species, equal partners committed to preventing another empire from rising. Taman accepted the position of First Chancellor. With strict term limits and oversight from representatives of every member species, his first act was controversial. It's offering Dominion worlds membership in the coalition. Not as conquered subjects, but as equals. Many opposed this, wanting revenge. But Taman remembered Jisu's help, Minho's courage, and the Dominion citizens who had nothing to do with the war. "We're building something better," he said in his inaugural address. "Not human domination, not alien subjugation, true equality. It won't be easy. Many won't trust us. We'll make mistakes, but we must try." The galaxy watched nervously as humanity, the species that destroyed an ancient empire in less than 4 years, tried to prove they were more than warriors. The real test was just beginning. 5 years after the war ended, First Chancellor Taman stood in the council chamber of the Coalition of Free Worlds and felt the weight of 200 civilizations watching him. The chamber was beautiful, built on a neutral world with architecture blending styles from dozens of species. But beauty couldn't hide the tension crackling through the air. "The Korvax situation cannot continue," declared a representative from the Velant species. "They are militarizing their border with human space. They fear you will become the next Dominion." Taman rubbed his tired eyes. He had aged visibly in 5 years, gray streaking his hair despite being only "We've reduced our military by 70%. We've shared technology freely. What more can we do to prove our intentions?" "Disarm completely," suggested a Dominion representative. One of the species who had joined the coalition after their empire fell. "Show the galaxy that humanity chooses peace. Leave ourselves defenseless." "Son," he spoke up from her position as chief diplomat. "We learned that lesson 300 years ago. Never again." The chamber erupted into argument. This same debate happened weekly now. Fear of human power versus humanity's right to self-defense. Trust versus caution. The coalition held together, barely, but cracks were forming. After the session, Taman met privately with his inner circle. Sunhee, Hygiene, and Yuna had become his closest advisors, though Yuna officially retired from public life. They gathered in a secure room, away from prying eyes. "We're losing them," Sunhee said bluntly. "Half the coalition fears us more than they respect us. The other half wants us to become their protectors, which is just empire by another name." Hyjin pulled up holographic displays showing military buildups across the galaxy. 17 species are secretly developing weapons programs. They're preparing for war with us, even while sitting in the coalition. "Can you blame them?" Yuna asked quietly. She looked thinner than during the war years, haunted by memories. "We showed the galaxy what we're capable of. The Dominion ruled for 4,000 years. We destroyed them in 42 months. That's terrifying." Taman stared at the displays, watching civilizations prepare to fight humanity. "We fought for freedom. How did we become the thing everyone fears?" Nobody had an answer. On Earth, Bowman walked through the memorial gardens Yuna had created. Walls of names stretched for kilometers, everyone who died in the war. He touched a panel bearing his friends' names, people who died beside him in the assault on the Dominion capital. A young woman approached, maybe 20 years old. She wore the uniform of the Coalition Peacekeeping Force, Commander Bowman. "I wanted to thank you. My parents were freed from Dominion slavery because of you." Bowman tried to smile, but it felt wrong. "I'm not a commander anymore. Just Bowman. Still you're a hero." "What you did, I'm not a hero," Bowman interrupted, his voice harsh. "Heroes don't have nightmares every night. Heroes don't wake up screaming. Heroes don't see their friends die over and over." He took a breath, forcing calm. "I'm sorry. The war broke something in me. In a lot of us." The young woman looked uncomfortable. "I didn't mean to upset you." After she left, Bowman sat alone among the memorials. He wasn't the only veteran struggling. Suicide rates among former soldiers were climbing. They had been trained to fight, conditioned for violence, and now peace left them adrift. The galaxy saw heroes. They saw damaged people trying to figure out who they were, Without War in the archives. Jisoo worked alongside human historians. Compiling the definitive record of the Dominion War, she had been pardoned. For her role in stopping the planet killer and now dedicated her life to preventing future conflicts through education, a young human researcher named Hajin brought her disturbing findings. Look at these intercepts. Nationalist movements are forming across human space. They're arguing that we should establish a human empire, that we earn the right to rule through military victory. Jisoo felt cold. How large are these movements? Small, but growing. Maybe 5% of humanity. They see the coalition as weakness. They want dominance. You must stop them. This is exactly how the Dominion began. A small group convinced they deserved a rule, growing until they couldn't be stopped. Hajin nodded grimly. We're trying. But free speech protects them. We can't silence them without becoming tyrants ourselves. Taemin faced this same problem when human nationalist groups demanded he dissolve the coalition and declare a human-led empire. They held rallies on Earth, attracting thousands of supporters who believed humanity should use its military superiority to ensure galactic peace through strength.minho. Now a liaison between former Dominion species and the coalition warned Taemin privately. This is how it starts. The Dominion didn't begin as evil. They began as people who thought they knew best, who believed force could create lasting peace. Then they couldn't stop. What do? These are my own people. Show them the alternative. Prove that cooperation works better than domination. But cooperation was failing. A border dispute between the Korvax and a human colony escalated when nationalist humans ignored coalition mediation and attacked Korvax ships. 300 Korvax died. The incident nearly destroyed the coalition. Taemin addressed the coalition emergency session, his voice heavy with shame. The humans responsible will face justice under coalition law. This attack does not represent humanity's position. We stand with the Korvax and condemn this violence. The Korvax representatives stood, anger and grief evident. Your words mean nothing if you cannot control your own people. The Dominion made promises too. Then they enslaved us. How are you different? Silence filled the chamber. Everyone waited for Taemin's response. This was the moment. Would humanity double down on power? Or would they prove they were truly different? Taemin took a breath and made the hardest decision of his life. You're right to fear us. We are dangerous. We proved that in the war. So I'm proposing a new framework for the coalition. Checks on human power, a multi-species security council with authority to override human military decisions, independent courts to judge human crimes, and term limits on any human and coalition leadership, including me. The chamber erupted. Human representatives protested, claiming he was surrendering humanity's rightful place. Alien representatives debated whether it was enough. Taemin let them argue, knowing this had to be their choice, not his decree. Sunhee worked tirelessly to build support for the proposal. She met with hundreds of representatives, listening to concerns, making adjustments, finding common ground. It took months, but slowly. Consensus formed. Hajin contributed by opening all human weapons research to coalition oversight. No secrets. No hidden programs. Complete transparency. If we ask others to trust us, we must be trustworthy. This decision enraged human military leaders. Several resigned in protest, but others, veterans who had seen too much death, supported it. They understood that security couldn't come from weapons alone. Yuna made a rare public appearance, addressing Earth's population directly. I led soldiers in the war. I planned strategies that killed millions. I know what we're capable of. That's exactly why we must limit ourselves. The greatest threat to humanity has always been humanity itself. We fought the Dominion because they became what they feared. We cannot make the same mistake. Her words carried weight. Yuna was a living legend, a hero of the war. If she supported restraint, many would follow. The vote came 5 years and 3 months after the war ended. The coalition gathered for what might be its last session. If the proposal failed, the organization would likely collapse, potentially leading to another war. Taman watched the voting board, each species registering their choice. Green for approval, red for rejection. The colors flickered as votes came in. It was close, terrifyingly close. But in the end, the proposal passed with 62% approval. The coalition of free worlds reformed under new rules. Humanity remained powerful, but that power was checked by democratic oversight. No single species could dominate. No leader could serve more than 2 terms. Independent courts had authority to judge anyone, even humans. Temin announced his intention to step down after his current term ended. 5 years is enough. Someone else should lead. Someone from a different species, with a different perspective. The human nationalists were furious. Some called him a traitor. But most of humanity, exhausted from war and fearful of becoming monsters, supported him. Bowman found peace slowly, working with other veterans to establish support programs. They created communities where former soldiers could heal together, remembering the war without being consumed by it. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Jisoo and Hajin finished their historical record, complete and honest account of the war. It included Dominion crimes and human atrocities, victories and horrors. "We cannot hide from what happened," Jisoo said at its release. "Every species must face its capacity for evil and choose to be better." 50 years after the war, the coalition thrived. New species joined voluntarily, drawn by the promise of equality and protection. Humanity served as peacekeepers alongside dozens of other species. Their military integrated into a larger force that prevented any single civilization from dominating. The quarantine stations around Earth were preserved as a memorial. On the largest station, now a museum, an inscription appeared in every coalition language. Here slept a species that forgot what it was. They awakened to war, victory, and the hardest question: what will we become? May all who read this remember that the greatest battles are fought not against enemies, but against our own worst nature. Taman visited the memorial in his final years, an old man now, gray and stooped. He touched the names of friends lost in the war and thought about the galaxy they had built from ashes. A young human child, visiting with a school group, approached him. "Are you really Chancellor Taman? The one from the war?" "I was, long time ago. My teacher says you saved the galaxy." Taman smiled sadly. "No, I helped break an empire. Other people saved the galaxy by preventing us from building another one. I don't understand." "You will, someday. Just remember, winning wars is easy. Living with victory is hard. The real heroes are the people who choose peace when they have the power for war." The child nodded, not really understanding, and ran back to their group. Taman watched them go, hoping the generation would never have to learn war's lessons the way his had. Yuna's final words, recorded before she died peacefully at 78, became the coalition's unofficial motto. They warned the Dominion not to awaken humanity. They should have warned us about what we'd become once awakened. The real test isn't winning the war. It's remaining worthy of peace. The galaxy remembered the Dominion War as a cautionary tale, not about the dangers of awakening sleeping species, but about the choice every civilization faces: become what you fear or rise above it. Humanity chose to rise. It wasn't easy. It required constant vigilance, painful self-reflection, and the courage to limit their own power. But they did it, and the galaxy, watching fearfully at first, slowly began to trust. The barriers that once imprisoned humanity now stood as a reminder, not of human weakness, but of human potential for both destruction and creation. The choice, always, was theirs. They chose wisely, most of the time.